I was halfway through my morning coffee when a grown man in dress pants and no shirt came zipping overhead on a zipline. He gripped a briefcase in one hand and what looked like a frozen waffle in the other, soaring across my backyard like a glitchy superhero. He nearly took my head off before crash landing into my hedge with the finesse of a drunk pelican. My dog gave a single bark, shot me a look that said, "This isn't right," and strolled back inside. That's when I knew something was seriously off. It wasn't a one-time stunt. Over the next 15 minutes, 3 more people whizzed by. One of them was Linda, our HOA president, cackling like she'd unleashed her inner wild child with a thirst for power and a knack for passive-aggressive emails. By the time the 4th person zoomed past, grazing my bird feeder, I'd had it. Still clutching my coffee, I stormed out front in my robe and slippers. What I saw was straight out of a fever dream. A 100-foot steel zipline stretched from the clubhouse roof to a rickety landing pad made of pool noodles and lawn chairs, cutting right over my backyard. I marched up to Linda, who stood at the zipline's base wearing a neon sash labeled Flight Director. I asked, as calmly as I could, what in the sugar-coated heck was going on. She grinned like she'd been rehearsing this moment forever. "It's a community recreation feature," she said, glowing. "It boosts wellness and connection. Plus, it's for the kids." I glanced around. No kids, just the flushed HOA treasurer bickering with a woman whose purse got snagged mid-ride, requiring a ladder rescue. "That's my backyard," I said, pointing. "People are flying over my house." Linda blinked like I'd stated the obvious. "Well, your yard stops at the 6-foot fence," she replied with a smirk. "Airspace isn't in the HOA rules, so we figured it's fair game." I waited for her to laugh, but all I got was the hum of another zipliner launching with a gleeful yell. I spent the next hour on the phone with the city, a zoning office, a lawyer, and even my cousin Tara, a wind turbine safety engineer. They all said the same thing. The airspace was a murky area. The HOA hadn't trespassed, but their setup was dubious. I wasn't helpless, I just needed a clever fix. Back home, I sipped my now-cold coffee, watching someone zipline overhead while live streaming. "Like and subscribe," he shouted, dropping a candy wrapper into my pond. That's when inspiration struck. If they wanted my yard to be their sky circus, I'd turn it into a storm they couldn't ride out. That night, Tara called back, intrigued. I pitched my plan: wind machines, disguised and programmed to kick on whenever the zipline moved, like a hurricane simulator for suburban Darid VYLS. She laughed for a full minute before agreeing to help. 2 days later, 3 massive turbines arrived. Tara showed up with a laptop, motion sensors, and a wicked grin. We worked late, hiding the machines as quirky yard art. She set them to trigger only when the zipline ran, with winds ranging from a breeze to a gale. I dubbed it Operation Gustbuster. Tara called it her best engineering gig since our college potato launcher. By morning, the turbines sat quiet under the sunrise, looking harmless. I waited on my patio, coffee in hand. At 7:14 a.m., Linda launched herself down the zipline like a suburban eagle. The sensors tripped, the turbines roared, and a blast hit her mid-flight. She spun, shrieked, and lost a sandal, which plopped into my pool. She stumbled off the landing pad. Hair a mess, sash askew, face ghostly. I waved silently, coffee raised, as she limped off like a soggy kitten. Word spread fast. That day, 5 riders hit turbulence. One guy slammed sideways into my fence. Another landed rear first in a cactus. A next-door post titled, "Cursed Zipline. Linda Meets Her Match," went up with VY Deo proof. By evening, the HOA called an urgent meeting. It wasn't in VY TED, but the yelling carried. Something about rogue weather and retaliation. My lawyer assured me the turbines were legal on my land, under height limits, and eco-friendly. "You're not stopping the zipline," he said. The next morning, I woke to screams of "not again," followed by the zipline's buzz. An older man spun like a pinwheel midair, crashing into my hedge. He groaned, muttered, "I'm sticking to stairs," and hobbled off. Operation Gustbuster was humming along beautifully. Tara dropped by with tools and a grin. "You've sparked an HOA safety waiver," she said, showing me a Comic Sans printout uploaded online. Riders now had to sign off on sudden weather shifts and midair enlightenment via chaos. We cracked up until she accidentally triggered a sensor, sending her notes into the pond. That afternoon, Linda returned with a clipboard, a tape measure, and a grumpy worker named Mike, sporting a safety expert helmet. He eyed the turbines and muttered, "That's a first." Linda, ever the drama queen, measured them with flair while I watered my daisies. "These are hazardous and illegal," she declared. Mike tested the wind speed, tried flying a paper plane, it crashed, and shrugged. "They're within limits." "Bold, but fine." Linda's face twisted like she'd swallowed a sour grape. "What about noise?" she snapped. "Quieter than your leaf blower," Mike replied. Then, to my delight, he tested the zipline himself. Linda nodded, probably hoping he'd prove me wrong. Mike launched confidently until a gust spun him backward into the landing pad. He landed hard, helmet crooked, hair wild, and grumbled, "I'm too old for this." He quit on the spot, tossing his helmet to Linda. "You're all nuts," he said, limping away as she stood stunned. With no expert or legal ground, Linda lost it. She launched a newsletter rant, taming yard storms, accusing certain residents of weather warfare. I fired back with my own flyer. "Wind happens, live with it," featuring a cartoon twister in shades. Tara printed copies, and we handed them out by the mailboxes. Allies emerged. Linda tried sneaking a ban on outdoor electronics into the next HOA meeting without inviting me. Neighbors fought back. One, who'd crashed into my pond, stood up. "If we're banning tech, start with her megaphone." Laughter killed the proposal. Then I caught a teen Linda's nephew, per his hootie, filming my turbines with a GoPro. "She said they're illegal," he blurted. I gave him a soda, showed him the controls, and let him fly a drone through the gusts. It crashed spectacularly. He left awestruck, soda in hand, rethinking his aunt. Linda pivoted, rebranding the Zipline Sky Thrill Experience with glitter signs and a thrill day. I set up a table. Dulaw 15 wind zone landing grass, stains free. I made Dulaw 40 and got a stunt marketer's card. She couldn't stop Mimi Yard my rules. In a last-ditch move, Linda called zoning. The officer? Tara's ex, Dave, who still adored her. He saw her Wi-Fi name at my place and beamed. Linda rambled about wind crimes. Dave admired the turbine's variable speed, nice, and told her, "All legal. Thanks for the wasted trip." She gaped as he snapped selfies with my machines and left. That night, Tara and I toasted over lemonade, watching a lone zipliner spin gently overhead. Peace was closed, but the saga wasn't over.